Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I come to the floor with my colleagues today to echo concerns about the budget process that is pursuing here related to a proposal that we will be voting on that I'm not sure I understand the math. I certainly, when it comes to Medicaid, want to make sure that we are protecting Medicaid, that the House budget that proposed to have $880 billion come out of the energy and commerce portfolio, that, you know, it's basically Medicaid and Medicare, so I don't know how you would get the majority of that money if it didn't come out of Medicaid. I hope my colleagues are not considering any cuts to Medicaid. And I heard from people all over my state last week about what a devastating impact that would be in the central part of our state, where many of our hospitals rely on a huge Medicaid, Medicare population. Hospitals wouldn't be able to deliver services or stay open. So I want to see a promise that we're not going to touch Medicaid, no sleight of hand, no gimmickry, no budget, you know, where all of a sudden now somebody's going to go in a dark room after we pass this and then say, oh, but I got a great idea. Here's how I'm going to save X billions of dollars out of Medicaid. I'm just not for it. When we had this debate before, I heard from Republican county commissioners all over my state when people wanted to block grant Medicaid, and they were basically saying, how am I supposed to run this jail? How am I supposed to take care of these issues in my county if you're going to block grant Medicaid? So again, I hope my colleagues won't do that. I also hope my colleagues won't count revenue from the tariffs. I hope that they're not saying, okay, well, we got a brilliant plan how we're going to give a huge tax break to corporations and billionaires, but we're going to do it basically on the backs of American people who are paying higher tariffs costs today. We don't need that in America. We certainly don't need these tariff costs. And what we are now seeing this morning is that China is imposing reciprocal tariffs. We are seeing a counterpunch from our other allies. And Avaya has basically said, a tariff is a last resort, not a first step in a process. We need to have a rules-based trade regime where you're doing trade that is fair trade based on rules and not using a disruption of the market that ends up costing all of us trillions of dollars, could be, and certainly impacting us. So my state obviously wants to see a more alliance-based approach. We believe in building alliances with like-minded countries. It's very interesting how Europe successfully created a huge alliance. Europe, many years ago, said, you know, we're better off together. Let's create a European Union. And now they have something like a $20 trillion GDP because they work together in an alliance. Or if you look at the trade deals that we did as a nation in the Bush administration, we did a half a dozen or so trade deals that now represent a $47 billion surplus because we did those trade deals with those countries and we created an alliance. So I just see this worldview differently than what's being proposed today. I definitely think that building alliances, getting supply chains here in the United States, strengthening those alliances are the key to our success. I believe in betting on the American worker. If you bet on the American worker, they'll do the rest. And we do need to help upskill and train, and we should reward them for their upskilling. Right now, I think we need something like 500,000 electricians. That's what the AFL-CIO and Microsoft say. Hardly people that get up every day and get on the same page. But they're saying we need 500,000 electricians. I met a young man in my state who said, you know, you helped us get the workforce training, and he said, you brought me out of poverty. I said, how did we bring you out of poverty? He said, well, I had some health challenges, and literally I didn't even have tires for my car. But a stipend that went along with the program, basically I was able to then get tires, drive myself to another town, get the training for an electrician, to become an electrician. He said, I accomplished that, and now I'm going to buy a house. That's how you got me out of poverty. So that's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on skilling and training the American worker for the opportunities of tomorrow that are here today. And that's why I feel so strongly that we can't ask the American people to pay for a bill that gives away tax breaks to billionaires and corporations by taking money from tariffs that are costing us. I know in my state, because I'm already starting to hear this from people all over, that they are impacted from these tariffs. They could be the largest economic impact in the history of our country, the largest increase, and very regressive, burdensome to households. But here's what I'm hearing from my constituents. A retired woman told me that her stock portfolio, which along with Social Security, she relies on to pay for her living and health care expenses, lost $40,000 yesterday. That was yesterday. I don't even know what's happening today. But we have Americans who are, like this individual, counting on Social Security and that market income for her retirement, and it just got a big hole blown into it because of tariffs. So please do not put tariff revenue in this bill and say that you gave that revenue to corporations for a tax break. I heard from the owner of Fern Seed, a plant and flower shop in Tacoma. The owner said, quote, "We work with the supplier of pretty much everyone and every vase that you will ever see in any plant or flower shop." She got she goes on to say, "We got notification 2 weeks ago that there's just going to be a blanket 10% increase on prices, increased costs for imported ceramics, going into cut into our margins that we are going to have to pass on to consumers, and with margins of just 6 to 8%, there's not enough breathing room." She continued to say, "Our employee review cycle is in April, and because of the uncertainty about tariffs, I have to give my employees a small incremental raise instead of a real raise. That puts me under the threat of losing those people that have been with me for 3 to 4 years, which is a lot in a very incredibly small business. And by the way, I don't expect to be paying myself either." That's what I'm hearing from my state. We know that small businesses are going to be hard hit by this. They're resilient, but this is asking a lot. I heard from the president of Distillers Guild and founder from Bravo Spirits. They told me for lots of distilleries in my state, it's 20% of business that's going away, whether that's from Canada or the EU, the two primary markets. So exports aren't a big part of our business, but it's 20%, and that hurts enough. I find this, Mr. President, very real for my constituents. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud to represent the state of Washington. They are a resilient group of people. But in our state, we evangelized becoming exporters a long time ago. We just told people, go do it. You can grow your market. Go take your product and get it sold overseas. And what we find is that a lot of these businesses, somewhere between 20 and 25% of their sales are in overseas markets. So it's a nice little boost to what just the domestic market is. We certainly grow more apples than can be eaten in the United States of America, and we sure as heck want them to be reached to international markets. And I would say the same thing for these distillers. It's one thing to look at the U.S. as a geographic market. It's another thing to look at the whole world as a market. It's amazing. It's an amazing market. And they want to have entry into that market instead of having some aspect of their business being attacked. So people are now holding back on spending. They're not going out as much. They're staying home, and they're going to start cutting back on everything. The opportunity has been taken off the table for export growth, and at the same time, we're getting hammered on day-to-day operation expenses. So they continue to say at this distillery, quote, they're concerned about bars and restaurants and surviving the tourism impact we're going to see during this summer. I'm sure they're saying that because a lot of our tourism comes from Canada, and I know that they believe that that is going to be challenged given what the Canadians are telling us. Mr. President, I believe open markets and innovation are a better approach. I hope that we also don't see any cuts in these important programs on the other side of the aisle that I know have been proposed by DOGE. I can't believe that when it comes to agriculture, they're cutting the ARS programs and research that help our farmers be competitive in addressing issues to get markets open in the first place. We know that we have to continue to fight to make sure that we do get these markets open, and I believe reverse these tariffs because I think that they are having a devastating impact. When it comes to fair trade, we need a rules-based trading system. And that is what the U.S. has led since World War II, creating bigger global opportunity, creating more prosperity, and certainly not leading with a tariff-first approach. So, I hope that we will here in our budget discussions think about these hard-working American families that are working so hard to produce these products. I hope that you will think about the fact that many of these people have taken the risk to become exporters, to grow jobs in our state. It was a risk, it's harder to do. No one wants the unknown of what's happening in an overseas market. That's why I also support the Export-Import Bank that made financing of those exports easier. And certainly, it makes for the innovation that Americans pull off much easier. I told a story yesterday about Cosmic Crisps. Cosmic Crisp took us 20 years to figure out this apple and to get it produced for the market. It is the story of R&D, work with federally funded research dollars from Washington State University, but that is about producing an apple that once you cut into it or bite into it, doesn't brown. That's an amazing feat. It doesn't brown. That means all of a sudden apples on a fruit tray or use in various things, people decide, wow, not only I like the taste, I like the fact that it doesn't get discolored. So we don't want to see markets closed to our Washington apples. We want to see markets opened. We want the R&D and innovation that has succeeded in growing this market be matched with the market opportunity around the globe. And that is why we were able to get reduced the first Trump administration tariffs on apples that shut us out of a $120 million market in India. My colleague who's on the floor, Senator Klobuchar, and I wish sometimes we had a, I wish we had a little, a Zoom or an app that shows us, but literally she and I got to go to India, and right after an official greeting of Prime Minister Modi, we were standing there in somewhat of a reception, and she and I pounced on him, and the first thing that we did is we started talking about agriculture. I mean, Ed, what was good is that he wanted to talk about agriculture too. That was the good news. That was the good news. But we had a very long conversation with him about opening up markets and why this matters so much to agricultural families across the United States. And he said, we were kind of surprised, but he said, yeah, maybe we need to figure out a new agreement that we need to do together. And when we came back, we were able to open that market not only to apples and to chickpeas and other lentils. It was a partnership that I think is going to continue to grow at a critical time. So, Mr. President, don't try to jam the tax bill with tariffs. Don't try to stick in something that is costing the American people a lot of money. Try to work together as a body to say that this approach to tariff needs to be reviewed, but certainly make sure that we are thinking about the small businesses, the individual consumers, the individual investors who are getting hard hit right now over this. And let's move forward on trying to come together on what will really help make American agriculture opportunity, small business success, opening markets, the main focus of our work. I thank the President, and I yield the floor.